This is our REHUGO reading presentation on the book Moneyball. Moneyball follows the life of Billy Beane, a talented baseball player who everyone thought was headed for the big leagues. Unfortunately, he could not overcome the psychological pressure and stress that came with being a promising new star, and was ultimately led down the path of managing a baseball team instead of playing on the field. His experience as a failed baseball player gave him a new perspective on baseball management that led the Oakland A's to unexpected success. Under his management, the 2002 Oakland A's would employ the help of players overlooked for their appearance or age in order to build a team that remarkably won more games than one would expect a significantly poor team to win against wealthy teams with millions of dollars to spend on their players. His unorthodox approach to baseball would make waves in the baseball world for years to come.
To start us off, Billy Beane's early life was filled with admiration from others. Everyone looked up to his physical abilities and expected him to become a pro baseball player. His school coach Sam Blaylock said 15 and 20 scouts showing up every time we scrimmage, and I didn't know what to do. So how much can high expectations hurt a person's mental health?
One thing that the book says is that since Billy knew everyone looked up to him, it gave him a lot of confidence in high school. But as his reputation grew, the huge amount of pressure from those around him put him under a really unhealthy amount of stress. And because he was really bad at handling all of this pressure, he performed really poorly after he joined his first pro baseball team. And he would constantly compare himself to others. And the book states that Billy spent a lot of hours in the outfield, dwelling on Strawberry's heroics and his own failure. Since he was so used to everyone praising him and admiring him, he was unable to cope with his failure. I think that even though he had tons of potential, the pressure of everyone's expectations on Billy was probably a big reason why he ended up quitting as a player.
Yeah, and another case of a baseball player mentioned by the book who faced pressures from those around him was Scott Hatteberg. Although Hatteberg was talented for his hitting ability, he constantly felt as though he was not deserving of popularity or attention. For example, referring to Hatteberg, the book mentions that even though he'd been in the big leagues for 5 years and had been the starting catcher for the Boston Red Sox, he had never really thought of himself as a big league ball player. The other players volunteered their autographs to fans before games, but he never did. Not because he didn't care to, but because he was worried they wouldn't know who he was. In addition to this, Hatteberg was signed by the 2002 Oakland A's because the Red Sox believed an injury had taken away his ability to be an effective player. By contrast, when he joined a team who specifically expressed his importance to them and the impact he made toward winning games, Hatteberg finally emerged as a star he should have been recognized as to begin with. This development shows how the expectations of those around you can either drag you toward despair or drive you toward success and strength. One other thing I want to discuss was how Billy was very successful with his baseball team because he challenged the established baseball traditions and used an unusual approach to team management that no one had seen before. So, taking that into consideration, what are some ways we can improve ourselves in society by moving away from what is accepted as the norm?
I think that a lot of people like to do what they're comfortable with, but to grow as a person, then we have to step outside our comfort zone. Like Billy, who he made a step outside of his comfort zone by shifting his career from playing baseball to managing a baseball team, and he was nervous about it, and so was everyone around him, saying that nobody does that. Nobody says, I quit as a player, I want to be an advanced scout. But since Billy decided to do it anyway, he was able to find what he truly enjoyed doing and became successful. I also think that the structure of our society, especially institutions like schools, would really benefit from trying out new things. Our school system is very conservative, and I think trying out new classroom environments and teaching styles could help out lots of students who are struggling right now.
Another thing I wanted to touch upon is when the book discusses the examination of the wealth of Major League Baseball teams. For instance, the book says in July 2000, the panel did pretty much exactly what Bud Selig hoped it would do, conclude that poor teams didn't stand a chance, that their hopelessness was bad for baseball, and that a way must be found to minimize the distinction between rich and poor teams. This quote shows how much the baseball community looked down upon poorer teams and didn't consider them to be able to succeed at all compared to the richer teams. By experimenting with new methods, Billy Beane was able to significantly improve the Oakland A's standings despite being one of the poorest teams in the league. He sets a good example for how we can employ new ideas to find success in our own lives.
Considering how the management of the Oakland A's specialized in players who are overlooked just because they're considered broken or faulty, what does their success about prejudice and what can we gain by looking past the prejudice?
When scouting for new players, many of the older scouts were quick to write off a potential star for their physical appearance. For example, the book discusses the player Jeremy Brown. One of Oakland's A scouts says every year that body had just gotten worse and worse and worse. However, Billy Bean inquires, "Can he hit though?" Pointing out in the past 2 years, he's had 390 at bat, 98 walks, and 38 Ks, and how those numbers are better than anyone's in minor league baseball. While scouts often looked at their appearance, Billy would look at their statistics. Jeremy Brown is an example of who Billy was looking for because although he was considered fat, they were able to share his stats where his numbers were higher than anyone's in minor league baseball. Billy's strategy was proven effective as later on in the epilogue of the book, despite being constantly teased by his teammates in the Oakland A's minor league team and being named Badger, Jeremy Brown's accomplishment of leading the team in batting average, slugging, and on-base percentage would grant him the nickname of Badge.
Another player the book talks about is Kevin Youkilis, a player Billy Beane tried to acquire during the 2002 trade deadline. When describing him to another team's general manager, he describes him as a nobody and just a fat double-A third baseman. However, in reality, Billy thinks of him as a fat double-A third baseman who is the Greek god of walks and as the Greek god of walks who is now hitting a few more home runs. Billy's approach of ignoring a player's appearance when evaluating their potential as players would be again proven correct. Although the book doesn't mention this, Kevin Youkilis would become a star player for the Boston Red Sox after he began his major league career. This kind of outcome speaks volumes about how our prejudice hold us back from seeing just how valuable the people around us truly are.
And this is the end of our REHUGO reading discussion. Thank you for listening.